So before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's video, I want to give you a sentence that we're going to talk about later in the video, but I wanted to give it to you now and see how well you understand it. So here's a sentence. I would have liked to have visited my family while I was in Chicago last week if I could have, but I couldn't. So remember that sentence. We will come back to it later on and talk about it a little bit more. Hello everyone, welcome to Dave's English, and in today's video I'm going to talk about what I think is one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of English learners make when going through the process of learning English. And that sentence that I talked about just a second ago, that is part of it. But before we get into the video, if you're ever interested in taking one-on-one lessons with me, feel free to do so. Go to davesenglish.com. There you can go to the front page. You can sign up for lessons right away, and I can help you with your English learning needs and help you with this English language journey. So if you want my help to help you with your English, just go to my website and I can help you out. But now let's get into the video. When learning a language, either English or any other language, we always hit plateaus. Now, we have probably heard of the intermediate plateau, but there's advanced plateaus and plateaus at the lower intermediate level. There's just this concrete wall that we hit that it feels like we can't progress anymore. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these walls are just in our head. Now, because we are not a native speaker of a language, we might not be the best people to evaluate how well or how poorly we are doing in our target language. But we always do that, and we do that quite a bit. And sometimes we try to change the way in which we study to then alleviate this pain that we feel that we have because we can't move up to the next level. Naturally, what a lot of people do is that they think that the reason why they're falling so far behind in their language is because they don't have enough vocabulary. So what they do when they hit this wall, they focus almost solely on vocabulary building, and that is it. They try to learn the most complex words that there are, and this kind of causes a problem. The first problem this causes is that you might learn words that are just not used in English. Yes, they might be words that people say, oh, this is an alternative to another word, but it might not be used. And if you do use the word in English, a lot of people might look at you and say, like, what are you talking about? What does that mean? And this is where you might go a little bit too far in your vocabulary learning journey. You might learn words that are just so obsolete and so random, honestly, that you come to the point where you're filling your head and honestly wasting your time with a lot of words that you'll just never ever use. A lot of times people don't know the context in which they need to use these words. So they might learn a certain word, but there might be a certain context that we use this word in. We can also accidentally learn the words in an incorrect way. We think that they are a synonym for one thing, but in reality, they're not a synonym. And it's important to know a synonym means a word that is similar to another word. It's not a word that is exact to another word. So that is important to know when you're looking at synonyms. Now, yes, you can learn the most complex words in the world and try to show off and act like you know the language, but there just might be no opportunity to use these words. So if you learn the word heteroskedasticity, there's only a very, very, specific situation in which you would use that word. But if you find yourself in that situation where you need to use heteroskedasticity, well then more power to you. I have actually used that word, hence the reason I'm able to actually pronounce it, which a lot of people in the science field can't. And it took me a while to do so. But learning vocabulary is a good thing, and building vocabulary is a good thing, but you don't want this new complex vocabulary to then replace your active vocabulary that you have now, because you might not sound right. It might sound really odd, and I'm going to get into this in more videos in the future. Now, let me go back to that sentence I talked about at the beginning of this video, and I'll try to say it again. I would have liked to have visited my family while I was in Chicago last week if I could have, but I couldn't. Now, you might listen to that and say, wow, that sounds like a word salad. That just doesn't sound like it makes any sense. It is just so long and so complex and all that with the grammar, but it actually isn't. The average American, the average Brit, the average Aussie, whatever, they would understand that sentence without any problem whatsoever, be able to break it down and figure out exactly what you're saying. And you might actually know what I said too, but it was the grammatical structure that made it that it sounded way, way more complex than it actually should be. And this is where a lot of people do not pay attention. They don't focus on grammar and focus solely on vocabulary. And when it comes to the lack of grammar learning, what happens is the vocabulary starts building up, but the grammar stays at a certain level that you're using simple grammar all the time. Let's take our friend Lingua Marina. She doesn't really use advanced grammar techniques. Yes, she is talking about all these other words that you can use in order to sound smart when speaking English. But if your grammar is kind of stuck in this intermediate phase, well, then it's not going to help. And if you're trying to learn how to speak like a native speaker and trying to sound intelligent, using grammar in a correct way or in a more advanced way is actually going to help you more than words that other people don't understand. In English, we focus way more on grammar than we do on words, but a lot of people want to focus on words. And why? Well, it's what you see on the internet. It is easy to teach somebody advanced grammar because all you need is a thesaurus, you need a word, you just need another word that equates that word, and there you go. It's easy. But to understand the grammatical structure of sentences is a lot harder. Now, the sentence that I talked about, if you have a grasp of infinitives, of third conditionals, and maybe a few other things, this wouldn't have been a hard sentence for you to break down and to break apart and understand the components of it. But would you be able to produce that sentence when speaking? And honestly, when learning grammar, these are the two books I recommend. I mean, the basics, the go-to books. The English Grammar in Use by Raymond Murphy. This is the book that is pretty much the standard for a lot of intermediate learners that there are out there. There are a lot of things in this book that a lot of intermediate students don't even know, but it's packed in here and you should be working on understanding that. The second one is the Advanced Grammar book, and I don't know if they have a new version of this. As you can see, this is kind of old, kind of torn up a little bit, and it's getting a little worn out and out of date here. But this Advanced Grammar book by Martin Hewings is to help you build on that advanced grammar. Now, if you actually want to build your grammar to sound intelligent, this is the best. Now, let me give you an example. Kangaroo English, who I've talked about on this channel before. Well, he sounds very intelligent when he speaks. Now, does he use some complex words? Yes, he does a lot. But the way in which he portrays himself is as someone who is very strong when it comes to grammar. And he sounds a lot more intelligent in the way that he speaks because of the complex grammar that he uses than, let's say, somebody like Lingua Marina, who is trying to use advanced words, but yet it doesn't sound right because she doesn't necessarily know how these advanced words, idioms, metaphors, or whatever work. My advice to people who are hitting that wall, and to me is the biggest mistake that a lot of learners make when learning English, don't put grammar to the side. Don't put grammar to the side. Make sure you are focusing on grammar as much as you are focusing on vocabulary. All right, so as I was ending the recording, my battery died on my camera, so that's why this ending's a little bit different, and I just abruptly ended the video. But I basically said everything that I wanted to say, so thank you all very much. If you've made it this far, make sure you subscribe and press the little bell to get notifications. I make 1 to 2 videos every week. Tell me what topics that you want to hear about when it comes to English language learning, the materials that are out there, and whatnot. And again, if you're interested in taking lessons with me, just go to davesenglish.com where you can sign up for lessons. But thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day. And now we're at the end card part, that there are end card things happening. So around somewhere in here, there can be playlists and videos and other things for you to watch. So if you want to see me talk more about grammar rules or whatever, if you want to see me shit on some other people who give horrible advice when it comes to English, these are the places to go. Have a wonderful day. See you soon. Bye-bye.